we are a co-sponsor along with the School of Journalism of this event. Geneva Overholser, the director of the school, had to go to New York this morning, so she's not with us. But this is a joint effort. Once a semester, we try to present some synergy in action, I guess, between the School of Journalism and the Center on Public Diplomacy. And today we're delighted to have as our speaker for this joint forum, Amra Tareen, who we met in Doha, Qatar, at a conference called the U.S. Islamic World Conference, which was organized by the Brookings Institution earlier this year. And we were on a panel together there. And Amra runs something that she created called allvoices.com, and I'll let her explain that. But I will point out one thing to give you a sense of how this project of hers has grown. We put together a bit of biographical information about Amra just a few months ago, and at that point we found that All Voices had about 4.7 million unique visitors per month, which sounded pretty good. We mentioned that to Amra last night, and she said, no, now it's over 9 million a month. So this is a growth industry, certainly. But we are very delighted to have Amra with us. I think All Voices is a great venture, and I think it provides a look at what the future of the news business in the broadest sense is going to be like. I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. So I did not know how Brookings found that I should be at the workshop that Phil and I were both in, so I was excited to go. It was a forum about connecting people, I guess, from the U.S. and the leaders of the Islamic world, and it was very interesting to see in that our group, there was a lot of translators who were translating things, and I think the meeting would actually take away from what the people were saying. And my wish for All Voices was to get 6 billion people almost writing about what's going on where they are, related to business, entertainment, sports, current events that were going on the ground. And that was the reason why I started All Voices. Initially, my whole concept was it's going to be in English, and as time progresses, we will also use machine translation to translate. If someone entered something into All Voices in a different language, machine translation would convert it into English or the other language. And then, as you know, machine translation only 75% correct, then other community members could actually translate it and make it better. So the whole concept around All Voices was it's a community newspaper. Anyone can write and contribute on All Voices. They can contribute an article, a video, an image from cell phone, or coming to the site and actually reporting or posting what's going on where they are. I started All Voices and I got venture funding, so it's a model that's very different from, there's not a lot of news companies that get funded by venture capitalists out in Silicon Valley. The other examples are, Huffington Post is also venture funded. Another startup that was citizen media called Now Public, that was actually acquired by Examiner last year. And then CNN iReport is the other competitor of All Voices. And you would be glad to know All Voices does not have a brand, and we have more users coming to All Voices than CNN iReport. And to me, the fact that iReport and iReporters are broadcasted all over the world by CNN. So why is All Voices being successful versus the other sites? Well, first I'll tell you why we're successful, then I'll give you the negatives, why I consider us not as successful. By my board perspective, we're successful because we're growing pretty fast. People are writing. We have over 420,000 people writing on All Voices, just to give you an idea. These people, about 40 to 60%, actually around 60% are from the US, the rest are international. We have 190 countries represented on All Voices. We have 32,000 cities that these people are reporting from on All Voices. When I call reporting, I want to make sure that it's not the reporting that you guys are taught. They may be writing opinion pieces, they may be writing analysis pieces, they may be reporting what's going on. But we want to make it a news site. So we didn't say post your or post your, whatever, your story. We call them report your news, because we want them to write things that are newsworthy, not things that they're not, because you have to guide your community in a certain manner. So there is a lot of people who are active and engaged, and we don't guide them, we don't have an assignment desk to tell them what to write. What they have learned is, however, that if they write something that's extremely current and breaking, then people are searching for that news on the web. And what All Voices is good at is taking their content and making sure that we show up higher on search results, that the two can connect. And as your content is better written and gets more traffic, more engagement from other users, you can make a certain incentive payout at the end of the month. So what we've done, we've created an ecosystem for writers who can be moms, college students, journalists and reporters who write, and then we publish it instantly. We make it search engine optimized. Our publishers are told to promote it in social media. And then what we do is, based on how they've done at the end of the month, they can get a certain payout based on their content. So we've created that loop, and as a result of that loop, people are making considerable amount of money on All Voices. And what I may call considerable is not a full-time job, it's just they're doing that on the side. And what's happening is they're going on blogs and writing about it, they're linking to All Voices, and now you've seen the flywheel to start working, and I've seen that in the last 2 months than I've ever seen in the life of All Voices. And as a result, our traffic started to just skyrocket, and which makes my board happy. So now I'll tell you the reason why I feel that All Voices has not been very successful is people are writing, but I also wanted more people to write. I didn't think writing would be that hard, but writing is hard. And a lot of people write stuff that makes no sense. So we have to keep this flywheel pumping with a lot of people, because few nuggets will make it to a top. It's user-generated content. It's like a pyramid. They're great on top, but that's a certain small percentage, but there's a lot of garbage. And so what we've become how to figure out what that garbage is earlier on in the detection process and do it automatically. What I found is that, so part of our ranking of content is when a person writes how many people engage, add more content, rate it up, add more comments, and then we look for triggers on the internet. Are there bloggers writing about it? What's the trends on Twitter and Google and all that? And we use that in determining how credible this piece of content is. So that's the good part. But the bad part is the ranking and rating. There's a lot of wisdom of crowd, and sometimes the wisdom of crowd is not necessarily the right answer that you want to promote. And so what I'm learning is that we need to come up in All Voices a hybrid model of journalists who can take some of the user-generated content and curate it or analyze it and dig deeper beyond. So you do need a layer of professionals on top of All Voices, which when I started, I didn't think of an incentive program. I didn't think of the professional layer, just because my background is not from journalism. I'm a technology nerd at heart, so I do everything based on algorithms and technology. But I'm getting to a point where I do realize that there are 3 legs of the stool: the citizens, the professionals, and some sort of aggregation, because we do aggregation of mainstream news into All Voices as well. So you need all 3 of those stools to be a really successful news-oriented company. So that's in a nutshell what All Voices is. Any questions before I take you to the website? Yes?
How do you deal, well, no, maybe you don't have this issue, litigation. I mean, when somebody's libeled, that's sort of when professionalism comes home to roost. So have you had that issue? I mean,
yes, we have had several issues where actually it's very interesting. We had actually the police in London sending us all these. There was some guy who was talking about the corruption in police and naming people that were not true. Now there's no way for us to determine if it's right or wrong. But what they happen is they send us, a cease or desist or a lawsuit in that case, for us to give the user's name or whatever it is, but the content is not owned by us. So what is different is that the copyright belongs to the user, not All Voices, and based on the DMCA safe harbor provisions, we're protected, but in some cases we don't want to give the user, the user's name, or the onus goes back to the user who's writing it. Just like in YouTube, it goes back to the user who's uploading the content. But we get a lot of cease and desist because we can detect copyright violation in text, but we cannot detect copyright violation in images. But we make sure when the user submits anything, when they register on Overholser, they go to the terms of use, and I'm sure most people don't even read it. But if they do some sort of violation, we delete their account.
But there's, if somebody is defamed or libeled on your site, there's no, you feel no responsibility for the correction or.
You know what? We have 440,000 people writing on our website. Right. So there's no way we can have an army of people detecting it unless it's another citizen raising the issue or the other person who they're libeling is raising the issue. So once we detect if this is a real issue, we delete the content. So the content doesn't exist.
Interesting.
But isn't that sort of true about actually YouTube and kind of the web in general? Kind of distinguishes it. I think people go to YouTube and know that there's a potential for things not to have such veracity as if they go to the New York Times. It doesn't make YouTube any less interesting or legitimate as a thing.
Well, it argues, I don't mean to make it.
No, but it's,
I mean,
it's
in
all
all
voices.
voices, I think
That's-
we're teaching news literacy here next year, which is
Okay.
why and I think that the audience is not very literate when it comes to knowing why one site is more credible than the other, or what to judge, or what's the transparency, or where are the sources, and that the audience is not as savvy as that.
And you are absolutely right. Everything is transparent on our site. The user has a profile page. You can read about the user. You know the location of where the user is based. We will not give their real, their email address. It's not public. But what we say, everything is transparent. We are a citizen media site. And you're right, there's an issue because most people get their news from their friends. They don't really care how other people are interpreting it. So if I'm the publisher and I distribute it to my friends and they're my fans and they read what I say, then they think I'm credible as a writer. And so what we do on our voices, we enable all these writers to become the stars or the Ariana Huffingtons of their own, rather than saying, okay, I'm going to believe what Ariana Huffington of Huffington Post is going to say. They're going to believe someone they know. And most people, why they come to our voices to read it is because either the writers are promoting it or it's showing up on search results. And they want to hear from a normal street person because they don't want an intermediary in the middle because there's an issue of trust.
Congratulations, you won.
That's the ad on all voices. That's probably advertising. That's the business model. So yes, so that is a big issue, and I find that as an issue too because what is happening with social media is most people are getting their news from social media. They're not even going to a mainstream site. Oh, okay.
See what you want.
No, actually, I will show you my profile page. So that would be. Okay, so this shows you, and you can see the lovely ads. So this is my profile page, and what it shows you what my name is, and it depends on what I want to be public. So some of the users can take down their real name if they don't want to show. I'm a member, where I'm based, because to me location really matters, because if there's something going on outside of San Francisco, I want to know more from someone who's a writer in San Francisco than not. A little bit of bio, and my little story that I wrote is I'm a mom who's concerned about the world and wants people in the world to talk to each other to resolve issues. Because I actually do believe in public diplomacy. And it shows you some of the articles that I have written. So this is something I wrote because I heard about, long call. And this is what the report pages look like, by the way. And this is where the traffic goes directly. So interesting enough, if you go to www.cnn, most of their traffic goes to www.cnn because people go and read the whatever is going on. On All Voices, most of the traffic goes to the pages, the post itself, because it comes through search or social media. So if you look at, I'm not such a great popular writer, but you can see my views, how many page views I got, how many rates up and down I got. These images were attached to my text. This is the text I wrote. Images were attached automatically. We have some partnership arrangements, or we take Creative Commons images and attach automatically based on algorithmically what's going on, what people were mentioned. Then if you look down, there's comments of people making comments regarding what I've written. There's latest tweets that was happening about the events. It's still showing. Oh my God, the comments. Okay. And then what we were seeing is related All Voices, what other people are writing about it. So as you can see, it continues on and on and on. And you can read all these perspectives about what other people are writing similar reviews or content about. And then more news from San Francisco, what's going on. And then we also take aggregation and aggregate mainstream news items. So if you don't trust us, you can go to mainstream news and see what they're saying. So All Voices is about all voices. It's not just user voices, it's mainstream, it's blogs, and we put it all on that page. So you can, instead of you searching, you can get all of that on one page. But starting, the seed of it is some user writing about what the event happened. My whole thing was, being a Muslim woman, I was taken back by his comment that he's scared of seeing people in Muslim garbs, that for first and foremost, they're Muslims, not American. To me, it's my right, whatever I dress up as, and people should not be scared of someone who's dressed then, because 9/11, most of the people were in Western garbs, they weren't in the Muslim garbs. So I wrote it was an opinion piece that I did, and as you can see, opinion pieces seem to do a lot better on All Voices than hard news itself, because that gets more engagement. So let's go back to my profile page. So whatever I do on All Voices automatically gets aggregated on the page, and what you don't see is, if you're logged in, you can see my reputation, what I get, my reputation is on All Voices. And then most users who try to make money on All Voices have another tab that tells them what their earnings for the month are based on how their content's performing, what's their reputation, and it's done algorithmically. And then, we automatically cut checks at the end of the month based on what the writers who have opted in to get paid from their writings. So most of the writers are actually laid off journalists, moms, students. We have people who are writing actually on Huffington Post, and they're writing on All Voices, and they seem to get more views than they would on
There's about 400,000 laid off journalists, are there?
No, they're not. They're not 44. But as you know, in the United States, newspapers are cutting off their staff. And what you're seeing is, we took feedback from some of the journalists that they wanted some sort of incentive, because Examiner.com, which is Examiner logo, they're also paying per post to their writers. And there's a big movement. If you look at Demand Media, which is an LA-based company, they're also going into news, and they're paying people per post to write articles. Along with Examiner, I've also heard other people who are in the news business, this is sort of becoming like a trend. Any questions? Yes.
How did you attract people to write articles at the very beginning?
Very good question. So when I started All Voices, I thought everything was viral, and you just put the site up and things happen. But no, that doesn't happen. So you have to seed the site. So what we did initially, we did try some viral videos and put it on YouTube about what the mission of All Voices was and how people could come and write. And then what we did was we bought keywords that are related to writing, sharing your stories, news and events in different countries. And we bought those keywords on Google, the sponsored links. So when people are looking at it, they click, they come to the site, and then they would read what All Voices was. So that's how we started the pump going. But it has to be a systematic approach. You have to seed your community before it can take a life of its own.
Presumably you can tell sort of what your geographic, demographics, all of that sort of information. I'm wondering if you have, is there a particular country or demographic that you're seeing in the number of posts?
It's very events driven. So when certain events happen, people write in there. So it's actually, that's the interesting part. It's driven by news as it happens. That's where you see more activity in a certain part of the world or in a certain country. We had a lot of Chilean people writing about the minor, the whole episode there. So, but totally, when we do a little bit of campaigns and go after these writers, interesting enough, I'm advertising based. The eyeballs and the writers, US writers, are very valuable than international. And my biggest issue with All Voices is we have a lot of writers internationally, and you cannot monetize international eyeballs. You cannot. You can if you have Salesforce on the ground there. And it's very interesting. I was watching Fareed Zakaria over the weekend. For most American corporations now, 50% of their revenue comes outside of the United States. So it is when you have ways to access it. I use third-party ad networks because I'm keeping my costs low, and third-party ad networks do not exist. So I do need to partner with, say, other organizations. So if I have people writing, actually I have a lot of people writing from UAE, so I need to partner with the mainstream media there who have feet on the street to monetize that traffic. So if we do any campaigns, we do more US targeted campaigns.
One of the things that has always been a problem with even something like Huffington Post is it's still very Western-centric and to a certain extent US-centric. And part of the model of Al Jazeera English, for example, is to report from the South as opposed to letting the North dominate. Are you finding that is working? Are you getting traction? You talked about news events. Did you get much reporting from Pakistan during the floods, or are you getting things from sub-Saharan Africa or from Latin America? Are you sort of is All Voices being useful in restructuring the global balance of the flow of information?
It's very interesting you say that. People are writing from all over the place. It's very interesting. Sometimes the readers of most of the events about the Fatah, the terrorism, our readers are more United States people than international. So let me just show you this example, because what we do is we give people the ability to look at the reach. So this reach button tells you where your traffic is coming from. So we have all the tools that are interactive. So this is telling you the viewers, 84% came from the United States, which is good. That means I can monetize my post, even though it wasn't such a great post. And then Canada was 5.2, Italy, so these two I can monetize. Philippines I cannot, and 25 other countries, which is 7.6%, I cannot, as All Voices today stands, I can't monetize them. So yes.
Is All Voices all English?
Right now it is. Now people can enter in other languages, so during the Iranian revolution last year, we had about 1,000 reports from Iran in Farsi. But we couldn't understand what it was, and we had a cell phone video. So the UI can take any language, but our algorithms are keyword based, so they should be matching keywords. But we don't have any translation mechanism built into it.
Is 84% of traffic from the U.S. pretty typical?
No.
What's the norm?
So 40% of our traffic comes from the U.S. To give you an idea, YouTube, 30% is U.S., the rest is all international. But you need to be that big to be able to monetize that traffic. But someone small like us cannot. Yes.
You said that the authors retain copyright, correct?
Yes.
Do they have to submit unique original content, or can they repurpose stuff?
They can repurpose it too, but they cannot do exact copy and paste. So if they do exact copy and paste, since we are keyword based, so I didn't explain what All Voices does. So whenever you post something, All Voices takes your piece of text. Whether it's structured or unstructured, you break out into bags of words. All the important words, like say, fire on San Francisco Bridge. Fire, San Francisco Bridge are unique to that piece of content. So we pull all the unique keywords. We extract entities, name of places mentioned, people mentioned. So when we get all that bag of words, we know the user, where the user is based. So then we know where the event is happening. It's either the location that's mentioned in there, IP address of the user, or where the user's location. And those keywords, we create what we call a news cluster. We put that user article, then we go searching on the web. We look for news feeds, what are the major news sources in that place, in that reporting. And we keep looking. We look at Twitter, we look at YouTube to see if anything new videos are coming about the same event the user's written. What are the blogosphere saying? And we bring all of that content together. And that's what I'm showing you, the images, blog posts, videos. You know, we can aggregate all that content with fair use principles out there. But we put it all together. And that also gives us a signal how credible what this user is saying is. Because we know the event is happening. Now, it's maybe an opinion of the user that we can't really judge from algorithms, so let the users rate it down. Crowdsourcing plays into it. So what we're doing is we're layering machines with crowdsourcing with users. Now, every writer has a reputation on All Voices based on how their content has done in the past. So once we know someone's our top reputable writer, we know that what they're writing is probably reputable because they've behaved, you know, nicely over the last few months. But if they start declining, we take their credibility or their reputation away. And then the payout that goes to users at the end is based on their reputation, how much content they've written, how much content they've written from where they're located about those events, because we want them to write more about their geography than 3,000 miles away. A lot of users do that, you know, may write opinion about national issues. So those are all built in algorithmically, and it took us almost 2 years to perfect these algorithms. And we're at a point where we are, but what I'm realizing that algorithms and crowdsourcing can take you to a certain level, then you need the professional layer on top. And sorry, yes. Keep going.
I was just going to ask, how many people are on your team? What's the hierarchy within?
Oh, really bad. Don't ask me that question. We're 6 full-time employees at All Voices.
Because all that, when you were saying we do this, we do that, it's all being done mechanically. Right?
But we
Yeah.
wrote the algorithms, yes. So initially we had more programmers than what we have now. So I want to now build more of the content type of teams. And so, so we still have programmers, and so I'm the CEO founder. I'm the janitor as well, basically. I get to do what no one else wants to do. So for me to come out to here at USC is really a breath of fresh air because I'm not in the office doing something. Sorry.
I'm a journalism student, and I find the idea of like IP addresses and news clusters very upsetting because it seems very like depersonalized in terms of like producing stories. Like I like the human touch in journalism and like what you can create. Can you talk about like the balance between like the people, as you mentioned, and the technology, and like where those converge, or like where you see that going?
Absolutely. And when I talk about technology, I don't want to take it away from you in any way, shape, or form. The technology to me is tools to help make the life of the reader and the writer easy. So I actually do not want to dehumanize the role of the writer, because it's the writer who creates the readers. It's the writer's content that actually creates All Voices value. So what I'm saying is, like a mainstream media organization, you would have the editors, you know, your CEO, your marketers, your advertisers, all those people, the overhead, then along with the reporters. What we're trying to do is we're trying to turn it over its head. We're saying that the reporter is at the center of it all, and everything else are tools to support and make the reporter's life easier. So here in this case, I'm the writer, and all the other tools are there to make my life easier. So I'll tell you why we get so many bloggers coming to All Voices to write. Because see, All Voices automatically aggregated that content, put the pictures, and did what a newsroom would do with a bunch of other people. Here we're giving the reporter the idea that you post your content, you humanize it, and with technology and tools, we'll search engine optimize your page, we'll automatically push it out to social media, and you will get the readership and people engaging with your content. So I'm not taking the human element, we're actually putting the human element and saying, you, the writer of the content, are the owner of the content, you own your copyright, it's all yours. We're a platform that's going to help you distribute. Yes.
If I didn't misunderstand you, so when a writer, be it a mom or a student, make a defamatory remark on a third party and a lawsuit was brought, you will not reveal the user's real name if it's not disclosed, and you'll just delete the content, right?
Yes.
But so in that case, you have no trouble, and that the writer doesn't have the trouble either. What about the one who's defamed, whose reputation is lost because of the? I just don't think. My biggest concern about this citizen journalism is that the citizens who are writing this journalism, who are writing disseminating news, do not fact check, do not do fact checking, and do not assume responsibility on the ground of net neutrality?
So a very great question. So I'll tell you some of the people that defamation comes into our, is actually news sources that we've aggregated that are showing up higher up in search results. So we get a lot of defamation. You know, I showed you the aggregation at the bottom of main news. So sometimes we actually get that. So it's an interesting question. I'm going to put it back to you because you are the professional journalist here. That we aggregate these news sources, United Press and the New York Observer. Sometimes because they find us on our voices, it's what that's writing that they will say that that's the defamation. You know, and we would say, well, this is a mainstream. We're just aggregating mainstream media. We'll delete that piece. So it's the same as how they approach newspapers, and mainstream news is the same as what we do. So defamation and libel, newspapers face the same problems that we do. So it's, you have to delete content, or you know. Let me ask you a question. What would a newspaper do if their reporter defamed someone?
Well, if a suitcase was brought, then you have to go to court and you have to stop publishing that piece. And then maybe some kind of rewards have to be warranted to the defamed party.
So what they do to us is we delete their content, and we delete in case the user's account. That's all.
Do you ever print an apology?
For publishing it?
Correction.
Correction? No, we don't, because we don't publish anything ourselves. We're not the publisher of content. We're the platform by a distribution. And if we start publishing, then we are liable for it because we're taking ownership of the use case.
That's an interesting distinction.
So basically, if you want to see a correction, if you've been defamed and you're hoping that your reputation isn't destroyed, you would just watch the comments forever and hope that.
No. If the content's gone, because how are they finding us the content? They're searching on Google, and we show up.
There once.
Yeah, and once we delete it, it's gone from Google's as well. It doesn't exist. Maybe in Google servers
for a while. And what she's saying is, if you're defamed once, and there's no correction, there's no responsible correction, which is what traditional media would do, our news organization, there's no way to get in.
Do you guys know the story, the South Korea story of the girl whose dog pooed on the subway train and she didn't clean it up? Do you know the story?
Is this an analogy?
It is. It's kind of interesting. It's to the point. It's kind of also the world we live in, and I think it's kind of interesting. So what happened was this South Korean girl, she had a little dog on her lap. I wish we could pull a photograph of it. I won't even worry about it. But anyway, and somebody with her dog had a poo on the subway, and she didn't clean it up. And somebody took video or photograph and posted it. And the country basically went crazy at her rudeness, right? Now you can go back and look at this photograph, and I have to tell you, I personally went and did an analysis of it, and it looked pretty wet, and she had one little tissue, and it looked like she didn't have any supplies to clean it up as well. I mean, in her defense, right? I'm going to go ahead and take her defense, but that's me. I will always give her the benefit of the doubt first. But the people, when she became considered this incredibly rude individual, she was so stalked by everybody that she dropped out of university and completely destroyed her life. So maybe we have to be thinking the reverse, which is now we live in a world where this is readily possible. So do we particularly, and I'll bring it back to the J schools and who we are, do we know that we, at a university level, should we be teaching our students to have a sophisticated and responsible approach in this world, and maybe bring more cases like that to our students' attention, et cetera, and at least on that grounds begin to educate? Because we do know that people have always often been propaganda. There's been hateful things said about people in printed lies, printed in newspapers. We've got, certainly we have the McCarthy era. So these are not new issues in a way, but I still think that the web does make it a lot more easy, makes it more readily accessible for everybody to participate in this. So maybe it's about an educational issue. And I'm not really saying it's one way or the other, but I think it's, certainly with YouTube, we see it all the time. And
just to go back to your point, so what would you like? For us to contact the user to retract the piece and make an apology? give that user the ability to write it over again. And what if the user doesn't agree with that statement? You want us to let the user know and connect the user and the person who's suing together.
What about
So no, but that's what I'm asking.
interesting.
So for us, it's very simple to just delete the account and say, we know this user misuses this platform, and it's better to delete it and get rid of any traces of that content. So when the person finds looking up on search results, they don't see it.
I think one of the things you do is when you're teaching news literacy and you're teaching
Yes,
the audience
absolutely.
/ reporter, I would say that one of the criteria for a higher standard of news information would be that they are transparent and responsible, which means that they file corrections when they're wrong. You're saying you're just basically the bathroom wall where people write stuff. You're not, you're just the platform. You are not a news organization. So that sort of gives you the,
No, hold on a second.
you know what I'm saying?
I
It's
know
like-
exactly what you're saying.
So
you
I
know what
guess
you've done?
the audience should then know that when they read here, they should take with that grain of salt, that this is a lot of opinions, and that's fine if they understand.
And the audience does, because we don't advertise ourselves. We say we're a citizen media news company. We don't say we're a mainstream. And our terms of use, before you can write anything, it tells very specifically, the owner of the content has copyright to it. And they are the owners. Now what we have is a reputation system. Based on how the writers are doing on All Voices, we have the highly credible writers, we have all a middle tier and the bottom tier where anyone can write. Now I wanted All Voices because I wanted an open media. I wanted to give it a voice for everyone. That's why it's All Voices. I'm not going to select based on my criteria who's a good writer, who's a bad writer, or what I should do. And that's why the platform and the tools are there to say who are the credible writers, because they've written over a period of time on All Voices and they have not had these issues. They have not done a copyright violation, they've not had a cease and desist, they're not a libel.
So
basically it's like
a wiki self-correcting.
It's like YouTube. I mean, YouTube takes it right. YouTube does a takedown notice, and
Close the window. Close the window.
so YouTube, and then you see it'll say this material.
Yes, it's a user-generated platform for you.
but
So I'm not
self-correcting.
saying it's for professionals.
But self-correcting.
Yes, self-correcting.
Different from what you change on this year.
I'm curious.
Well, because YouTube is the same thing, right? If they put up something defamatory, they just take it down. They don't issue any kind of apology or correction or.
But which is why Wikipedia is not as high in credibility.
Well, no, YouTube.
What you're talking about YouTube.
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. I'm curious. I know that a lot of really excellent journalism does have lawsuits brought against it because it offends a public person or it makes someone look bad, even though the story is correctly reported and the paper or the story is correct. So whenever you have a C&D brought against a story, do you automatically take it down?
No, we don't. We have a person
So how does
involved.
that work?
So 1 out of 6 people, one person is all business. Is they're searching, they're calling, they want to know that it's the right before we do it. And that's where we bring the news out. Yes.
Just quick on that point is that the person who's being defamed could also then create a profile and do kind of their own personal
Absolutely,
correction.
they're
That's
open
what's
to do it.
The positive
Absolutely. You got
aspect
it.
of this
You
news is
got it.
that you can have
Absolutely.
the person writing the correction.
That's why we want it to be an open platform, as open as possible. And that was the core to All Voices, and that's why it's All Voices, because we don't want to take any voices side.
Yeah, just curious. What about the person whose profile was deleted because he or she made a defamatory remark and then she made another, and he or she, sign up for another account using another name?
And they can, and they absolutely can. Because
They can.
that account will start from 0 reputation, and they'll build up their reputation over a period of time. Because they absolutely can. And I'll tell you, on YouTube and all these other places, even on Dig, any open platform, people have multiple personas. That is right. Your number of registrations, they are multiple people. One of our writers, who's an ex-AP journalist, has 2 or 3 personas in all places. Because whenever our site has some issues, I get an email from him. And sometimes it's a different name or a different, so I know he has multiple accounts because there are things he wouldn't want to say as his main account versus what he'd like to say in our sub-accounts. So you're absolutely right.
So has the reputation system itself, I mean, clearly that's the way eBay succeeds. It's not a reputation system. And have you found that's been in terms of your better reputation individuals, do they have less takedown notices? Have you found any correlation
and
with
that's exactly right. And one thing why we also do with the most reputable users is we also pump it to Google News. Because Google News, we don't, so that's why we have these tools to sift through, as you said, the bathroom wall of writers.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
That's
okay. But you're right. You're right.
The subway wall.
No. But you're absolutely right. You know, you have a passionate woman here who wants to give voice to everyone. But yes, we do have a bathroom wall. And the whole thing is you have to sift, and it's a pyramid. And you have to get the top ones out. Yes.
How long does it take a contributor to attain the highest level of reputation?
Oh, that's a good question. Depends on their writings, how many posts they post and how they do. So when you write a post, our algorithms are checking how people are responding to it for 2 weeks for every post. So it depends how you're writing. The reason why we do 2 weeks is news is very different content than most content on the web. So most content on the web is what they call evergreen. It's the sense that if you write a piece on the web and it's up on Google search results, you'll always get traffic, some traffic coming to it. But in news, usually a news post, most of the traffic comes in the first week and then it almost goes to zero because no one's really searching for it, unless it's connected to other pieces, you know, it's historical. So that's why we've said that, okay, this piece of content, we're going to judge how it does in the 2 week window. So the credibility meter is dynamic over a 2 week window. So you cannot have any reputation if you start for 2 weeks period. So you're going to be stringer regardless. Yes. Any other question? Yes.
It strikes me that the profile information is only as good as what the user gives you. So I could, you know, have a pen name, or unless I want to monetize, I guess then you check their tax information and then you have to verify.
That's exactly right.
Otherwise, the information you get is just as good as whatever I want to provide to you, right?
That's exactly right.
So how do you deal with, you know, building your credibility? I mean, for the readers to be able to trust when it's just whatever I want to give you or not give you. I mean, I could say...
No, very good point, and I have multiple responses to it. From really angry response to a good one to...
Start with the angry.
You're absolutely right. So they can have any pen name and share whatever. So we don't judge them. We only judge them by the content they write on all this. So the reputation system is based only on their content and how it does. And they don't violate and how are the inputs getting into it. So you could have any name. We have a guy who's Adrian Holloman, and his pen name is Asshole, and I hate him because he's shortened it, but I know his name because I signed his checks. So you're right. Now, yeah. So you users, you're saying the credibility. You know, we have 9 million uniques a month. We're almost the same level of unique readers as BBC. So that gives you an idea. So, and what we're saying is our cost of distribution of news is 0 because it's through search and through social media. So, to be honest, my goal was not to be the most credible news organization in the world. My vision was to give people the voices to share what was important to them. And you know, when I say I failed, yes, I failed in that because if you looked at the Ground Zero Mosque, we had a lot of all voices people against you know, the fact that they should be allowed to build it from Middle East to Pakistan to all over the world. But you know what? No one focused the light on all voices. Instead, they went to Pamela Geller, the bikini blogger who actually coined the word Ground Zero Mosque, because it's not even at Ground Zero. So to me, it was a main idea, again, that I failed at all voices, giving all voices the platform when mainstream voices still point at extremes and, you know, make them very popular.
I hate to be, I see your professional training up there at the top.
My training?
Well,
No, that's our
website.
Oh, never mind. What do you, come on, tell me, what's my professional training?
Do you offer any kind of help or editorial guidance or
you know, that's why I want to bring people in to actually do that, because there are so many people who would love a little bit of coaching. No, seriously, who would love a little bit of coaching. And we wanted to do this, I think my marketing guy was putting this coaching center, how to write reports in a professional manner, and that's part of the site that we want to develop.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's.
Why are you doing so well? I mean, why do you have this 100% increase basically in the past?
I don't know.
5 months?
I think it's the people doing it. For me, it's hard because my servers keep going down, and some of the traffic I can't even monetize. I think it's what people say. I think it's the incentive that they can make. So imagine a mother making an extra $1,000 a month. And
I
that's.
think you just recruited another 50.
And then they put the links in their other places, which builds more SEO juice, which drives more. It's become a little flywheel. And my biggest issue is my costs are rising very rapidly. And so I need to raise more money, and I'm tired of going to VCs and begging for more money when my monetization is hard right now.
Have you ever surveyed your
Yes, we
your
have all the
audience?
data.
Yeah, to find out, are they coming to All Voices instead of going to CNN.com to get information? I mean, has All Voices become a news source as opposed to a venting arena?
All right, so I'll give you a spot. So most of our readers don't come through our www.allvoices.com, but we have a return rate of 23%, higher than most news organizations. So the people who come to All Voices, 23% of them return to All Voices. So that's a very high number. But they don't go to www.allvoices.com. They come to report pages, they come to profile pages, they come through social media to pages, and that's what they come. So I have this whole issue. Like Huffington Post, most of their traffic comes to their landing page. And what I would like to do with my 3-pronged approach, I would like to make the front page more professional. So people who want professional news can actually bookmark that page, because I want to make this company a success. So that's why I think there's a hybrid approach that we could do, and have that owned by professionals, and and let the citizens still do what they're doing and get their voices heard, and you create a mix. But that's a different company than what I started.
Question.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, the figure you had for US was 40% or 60%?
40%
40% traffic.
60% writers.
So
yeah.
40% traffic, right? 60% writers. 40% traffic, and then you get 9 million, so 40% of your 9 million, whatever. And and that figure is not enough for you to monetize on the advertising.
Oh, I can monetize it, but remember, look at my shitty ads.
So
I need a sales guy, and that's what we're working on. Out of my 6 people, I need to hire an ad sales guy.
So that's I see. So you think
I'm sorry, I would get woken up in the middle of the night because my bedroom's next to my office, and sometimes, hello, and you won! And I get out of bed to go, and I'm like, damn it, I don't kill our marketing guy.
But you think that you potentially with that kind of figure might be able to sustain on an advertising model, or do you think you might have to adopt other strategies?
So based on my model, I need about tripling of that number to make money in the U.S. to cover my costs.
Tripling of that number.
Yeah. That's exactly.
And that's just ads, right?
Just ads.
Just ads, no other monetization strategy.
No, and people have talked about syndication, but I need a business development arm to go do it, and that's what they get.
Out of all the people who are contributing, how many of those people are making money actually?
The top tier is making money, not everyone is.
Is that like 2%, 1%?
5%. So you have to be a good writer, and that's hard.
How about $1,000?
Okay, so last month I wrote a check for $2,000 for the first time in All Voices history. And actually it was someone in India. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
Imagine that.
Wow.
Yes. It's fortunate for him, not for me.
No.
Yes.
My question's coming back to this issue of monetization, because it's actually not something I'm as familiar with, and if everyone else is. So we're talking about monetizing overseas markets. You say it can be done.
It can be done, but
So
it's just
what
I can't, because I don't have access to those markets from advertising perspective.
So what would you need to make that happen?
So I need to get either partners within that country, a media outlet that has feet on the street. who know the advertising environment to partner with them. That we do a revenue split on content, or just say it's not monetizable. But that means I need to either have a partnership or have my own people there. So it's one or the other, and that means the cost structure gets a little higher. So partnership is the best way to do it. And I'm talking to a bunch of media outlets in those countries. But then remember, I'm facing the same issues that they poo-poo it because it's citizens reporting. And that's a big factor still. The mainstream mindsets do not value the citizens.
Have you broken any really interesting stories, or?
Oh, the Mumbai bombing? We actually broke it because we knew.
You broke the Mumbai bombing?
Yeah, and no one knows about it. We had 4 or 5 reports, and I saw it later and I called my friend in India. They said it just happened, and then because we get other feeds coming in, it was interesting to see there was 6-hour lag on other mainstream. And the other thing we do well, why we get search traffic, bringing back to your point, why we get uniques, because local stories. Since mainstream media is not covering them, a citizen writes about it, and when other citizens from that city are searching for it, they end up on All Voices. Not because our page rank is high, it's because that's the only content that's available, and that's how the traffic comes. So I may never know which story is getting the traffic, because for us to be coming to our viewpoint, it has to have enough momentum, because it's all distributed pages, and by the time we know, we can calculate back from the date of time of publishing and make up our own decisions as to what's right.
It's interesting. It gets back to the point that Judy Miller she just had to leave to teach, but it sounds like when you talk about particularly professionalizing your front page and making that more of a news source destination in and of itself, you're really taking a step going from just being a platform to being something more than that. And for people who are trying to chart the evolution of the news business, what you're doing is, instead of just being this wall where everybody can come scribble on it, you are more aggressively competing with what people might traditionally consider journalism, which is really interesting. I mean, they're not coming to you just to vent. They're going to be coming to you to get news and then to feed back about the news, which is the whole new interactive concept of whatever is going to replace journalism. I wouldn't even call it journalism, really. It's something new that needs a name, but the fact that you're generating that much traffic through this model, the potential is that you'll be generating much more once you become a news destination as well as sort of an expression destination.
Exactly, and then people bookmark allvoices.com, and you build a brand. And right now, we haven't built a brand.
Yeah. And the fact that you're doing that with 60% non-U.S. participation, that's amazing.
Yeah,
and you compare that to Huffington Post. Huffington Post looks old and stodgy compared to...
And that's what I pitch to my investors. It's the old model in the online world.
Yeah.
It's not the new model.
I know people have to go to class in about 2 minutes here, so those who enjoy going to class. But thank you so much, and I'm going to stick around.
And I apologize if I offended anyone, because sometimes I get very passionate about this. And when you're looking for money all the time, you get a lot of comments.